everyone. I welcome the Plano Senior Center back to the Trinity River Audubon Center. Welcome. Have any of you been on a prior tour here at the center before? So Pam's brought a whole new batch in. Thank you, Pam, for discovering this place and sharing it with so many people in your reach. That's really important to us. So welcome to the Trinity River Audubon Center. We have been here since 2008, but there was a point in time when it was a very abused property. It was an illegal landfill and was a real negative asset to this part of the community.
This area of Dallas has been ignored for probably 60 years. With the exception of the ability to take gravel and sand out of it, that's about the only benefit that this region has had.
The city has never been kind to poor people and persons of color.
If you don't have a group of people staying on their backs and making them do things, we don't get anything done.
I'm always telling people about stuff that went on out here 25, 35 years ago. It was real, it's enlightening to some of the younger people because they can't believe some of the things that happened out here 35 years ago. They can't believe it now, but it happened. So we just, as us older people, we move on, and talk about what happened and talk about what we would like to happen. So that's where I look at it.
This part of Dallas is unique in that when Dallas started building itself out, especially after World War II, it went north instead of south. And a lot of the area that was developed down here, a lot of the development that you see happened many generations ago.
This part of town wasn't even part of Dallas. It was an independent town with its own city council, its own high school, its own school system.
Pleasant Grove was a very, very white community. When I talk to people now, I tell them I grew up in the Leave It the Beaver world, you know, where everyone was white, Baptist and Methodist, 1 to 2 children, 1 to 2 car garages. I mean, everything was the same. You know, it was very homogeneous.
But as it began to develop out here, and more ethnic groups come in, then there was definitely a movement of people going out to Mesquite and other areas.
Because when I moved out here, it was all white neighborhood. At the time, I wasn't really interested in the neighborhood as proper. I liked the house and the location. And that was one of my reasons for moving out. The house on the corner, it had space in the back where I could put my garden and things like that. And I moved there, and I've been on that corner 42 years.
We had a lot of different neighbors, and we were all kind of close, and we knew each other, we knew each other's kids, because they went to school together. It was just real kind of simple and just easy going.
All of a sudden, we started having this big trucks running down our street, dumping rocks and trash and just everything you can name.
When they have tops on the truck, dust flying everywhere, falling off the truck on the roadways, and so the trucks ran all night long. You know, there wasn't no certain time for them to stop.
And at the time, I lived on Deepwood, and I lived closest to the dump. And I saw a lot of different things, a lot of trucks back and forth, constantly back and forth. I had a hard time getting out of my driveway because of the trucks constantly going up and down the street, all times of the day and night.
And the person that was running the dump, I think he had a problem with being crooked, so he was letting them in there with all kind of stuff that wasn't supposed to dump in there. You know.
We were calling into the city about it, and they wasn't doing very much about it. A couple of times they would come out, you know, and stop the trucks for a little while, and then they would start back. So it was just a big mess.
The neighborhood immediately next to the landfill had been a white neighborhood until about the early 70s. While it was a white neighborhood, the city of Dallas did code enforcement and did not allow any illegal dumping at that site. When the neighborhood transitioned into an African-American neighborhood was when the city issued permits to the owner of the Deepwood dump to fill the large gravel pits that were on site with solid waste.
What the city got out of the operation of this illegal landfill was two things. One, the city testified that the reason it was allowing this to go on was that it wanted the property filled, brought up out of the floodplain so that the city could rezone it industrial, which would increase the amount of property taxes it would get. Now this was rezoning in an area next to, in and amongst, a residential middle-class neighborhood that was now African-American. And the second thing it got was it was engaged in a massive demolition of houses in the black neighborhoods. It didn't want to use up its own landfill space, and it didn't want to have to pay for this to be put in a regular landfill. So that was where most of the demolition debris came from, was the demolition it was doing in black neighborhoods.
This operation lasted through the 80s. A new owner came in and bought the property in the 90s, continued its operation. Tons and tons of solid waste entered this site over a period of 25 years.
Good morning, my name is Harold Cox. I live at 7415 Ridgewick Drive, Dallas, Texas, over 25 years. The city allowed a privately owned dump to open in 1982, about 100 yards to the east of the closed South Loop dump. The community protested the opening of the illegal dump at the end of Deepwood, Jim Miller, and Gay Glen Street. When the city responded to the complaint in November of '82, they found massive illegal dumping. A citation was issued. The dumping continued until the year 1997.
I spoke to this assembly in November of '95 when trucks were entering our community and illegally dumping all sorts of material around the clock. They would begin early in the morning when my husband and I would drop our children off at their bus stop. They'd continue throughout the day and late into the night. I contacted the president of the Shady Hills Neighborhood Association and discovered that efforts had been going on for years to get that dump closed. Not knowing where else to start, I wrote my state representative, Eddie Bernice Johnson. She responded and referred me to Mr. Lipscomb's office. I also called the EPA, made numerous calls to code enforcement and the Dallas police in my efforts to make city officials aware of the constant activity. You were already aware.
If this problem in North Dallas has done been taken care of, and I don't want people to sit up there saying, I didn't know nothing about it. This problem been going on for 20 years. We have documents from 1982 signed by the assistant city manager that we have now that signed it back then. So I don't want this council, nobody else saying they didn't know the problem was there, because we have documentation that what's been going on since 1982.
The landfill caught on fire twice and burned. It burned in 1988 for 6 months with no publicity. Then there was another large fire in 1996, and the site burned and just wreaked havoc on the neighborhood.
When it burned, it had so many tires in it, it just burned forever. It was a real, environmental disaster.
I got sick. One of my neighbors got sick. I have heard from her that other people got sick.
And the whole neighborhood was smoked up. You couldn't come outside without coughing. You come out in the morning, your car was covered with something. We don't know what, some kind of cinder.
Some people say, why don't you move? We couldn't just up and move when you have so much invested in the area where you live. You couldn't just find another area. So we had to endure that for years and years, all of that stench, all of that underground smothering. And it just made me sick. I told other people about the living hell that we were going through. And they would constantly ask, just move, just go live somewhere else. Well, it's not that easy. It's not that easy.
We had a neighborhood meeting to talk about what we could do about it. And out of that meeting came, we might need to sue the city.
We hold the city responsible for any personal injury, personal damage to our property of the 3-month fire from the illegal dump this year, by allowing the dump to continue to operate from 1982 to 1997 over the community opposition.
And I ask myself, not trying to grandstand, but I ask, I also have been so disrespected behind what has taken place here until I also will join them as interveners in a lawsuit against the city of Dallas, because it should be done. This is going on, as Mr. Cox said, since '82. How can an 85-acre illegal landfill operate within the city of Dallas? This is complete disrespect for a whole area, and they are right. They don't want to hear no more talk. They want something done.
I'm the widow of Judge Barefoot Sanders. He was the United States District Judge for the Northern District of Texas for many, many years, and created in the courtroom a legacy for this area, an area of education, environment, personal injury, all sorts of cases came across his way. A big one that many people know is the desegregation of the Dallas Independent School District.
Judge Sanders, he was a real nice man. He listened to the case. He came out to visit the site. And I thought that was awesome for a judge to take off his, judge outfit and actually walk where we were complaining about. And he made a difference. He said, well, there needs to be a division between the neighborhood and the dump, because it was such easy access that the trucks had to going in and out of the neighborhood. So if you're going to stop something, show that you have an interest. And so he did, and I really commend him for that.
My husband was really at the end of his life and his service, and he really wanted to see this a done deal while he was alive. He wanted to be able to rule and let this be a legacy for this area.
The city has had numerous opportunities to minimize the health hazard that exists next door to the plaintiffs' homes by simply following its own procedures. These failures, when looked at in combination with the city's careless oversight of its own demolition contractors, have contributed to the disposal, transportation, and storage of solid waste at the Deepwood site under Title 42 of the United States Code, Section 6972A1B. The court finds for the plaintiffs as to their contributing to claims against the City of Dallas as to both the Deepwood and Loop 12 sites. Their contributing to claims against Terry Van Sickle as to the Deepwood site, and their claim that Herman Nethery violated the federal prohibition against the open dumping of solid waste at the Deepwood site. On all other claims, the court finds for the defendants.
We finally got them to stop dumping. And then after we got them to stop the dumping, the next question was, what are we going to do with all the waste of it?
The neighbors wanted them to take that trash out because they brought it all in. But they said it would cost so many millions of dollars for them to take it out.
The property owner did not have the financial wherewithal to do that kind of cleanup. The city did, and so the court ordered the property owner to give up his property to the city and the city to do the cleanup. This was happening at the same time as trying to develop the Trinity River project, and that was both in the forest, in the middle part, in the floodway, up in the Elm Fork. It was transportation, recreation, flood control, and economic development. And so we realized that here was our opportunity to do another objective of the Trinity, which is environmental remediation.
And they had a couple of suggestions. And the last one that we went for was, we'll cover it up, we'll put in some monitors to monitor the gas coming out of the ground, stuff like that.
So what we did was we consolidated the trash, we put it in a certain area of the property, and then we had a landscape architect design the whole terrain to make it look more natural.
So today there is still the release of methane from the landfill, and the monitoring of that and the safety of visitors around that is really important.
And there's literally a vacuum that draws air through that pipe towards the flare. Then there's never been enough methane to burn by itself. So they have to insert enough propane to add to the methane to burn off the methane, so that the methane doesn't build up and cause any environmental issue.
The neighborhood is much better off now than it would have been if it just been a closed landfill, because we did that for a while. The city wouldn't maintain the landfill gas extraction process, they wouldn't maintain the cover, they wouldn't maintain the gates, they wouldn't maintain the security. And so when the judge came up with the idea of letting them keep it on there, and they wouldn't have to pay to move it all off, which would have been about $100 million or more, he did the right thing. Because now there is a vested interest in keeping the place safe, in keeping it sound, keeping it secure, keeping the methane and landfill gas extraction method going, keeping the cap intact, etc.
I think that one of the, truly in the 30 years I've lived in Southeast Dallas, one of those moments where I really honestly couldn't quite grasp that this was possible is when I began learning that this was being built, let alone when it opened. Because I was so used to living in a place that no one believed existed.
I was kind of elated. I was like, something is being done. And what I had found out about this building, I liked. Something for the kids, where they can come and kind of enjoy the wildlife.
It's one of the missions of the center is to make children comfortable in nature. It's one of the things that we always do.
Really, it's all about, in our minds, laying a foundation for the future Texas conservationist. That's what these kids are. It's about laying that foundation and building that foundation and planting a seed for stewardship.
But one thing that is a part of the settlement of the case was that this center, when it became active, was to always be reaching out to that neighborhood that had been so severely impacted.
All of 75217 can come here for free. It's something that came out of all of that. It's something nice that we can look at and say, well, this happened, but this is a nice place. You know, it's something we can see that came out of all of that mess.
So what's your neighborhood like today?
Today is not like it was when I moved here, of course. And I really don't want to say too much bad about it because I'm still there, but it's not a whole lot of good things I can say about it because before the dumping, it was a nice neighborhood.
There's still an hotel, motel, just still operating. They renamed Loop 12 the Great Trinity Forest Highway or something. It's full of used car lots. You know, it's not exactly a revitalized neighborhood.
They supposed to be putting a golf course up in, and with that golf course come restaurants and maybe hotels or whatever.
The Trinity Forest Golf Course will have a facility for First Tee, which is a nonprofit that teaches kids how to play golf. The SMU Golf program will be there. Also, next door to that is the Equestrian Center. And then knitting all of this together is our trail system. Now, what all of this means for that area is economic development, promoting a sense of retail, bringing people from the northern side of the city down to the southern side to see what the abilities are there, and I think it will be a real citywide asset.
And that's what we were all hoping for at, different intervals, that the city would, recognize, there are people that live here, and people have the tendency to love where they live. I mean, most of the people that are around you. Our neighborhood I live in now, you don't know your neighbors. And it's just, kind of awkward, but Deepwood area, you know your neighbors. You have a closeness. So with the improvement that's going on, I think it's going to enhance the neighborhood. I really do.
If my soul was a ship, yours might be.